I have captured in this very submission, we are witnessing a situation in Plateau State, Mr. Speaker, that is very, very critical in terms of the welfare, well-being, and security and safety of citizens. As I started saying, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, Plateau State is bleeding. It is bleeding from mass attacks and mass killings. Mass burials have become a daily occurrence. Mr. Speaker, today, the national and international media was awash with reports of 11 youths, very vibrant young men, that were ambushed while returning home from market. And the 11 young men that were killed are further to what happened last week in Bassa local government of Plateau State, where over 27 persons were killed in a classroom, where the military had advised them to go for safety. While in that classroom, supposedly to be protected, they became victims of a mass slaughter. And that is the situation in Plateau State. And we are bringing this motion, particularly in the instant case, where there was a protest in sub-village, and the villagers were protesting because two boys were compelled by the personnel that were at the checkpoint to check a well for them, and the boys went in and died. And they were compelling another set of boys to go into the same well. As a result of that, there was a protest by the community. This girl that is now in hospital was among the victims, and when I visited her in hospital, she narrated her case that the soldier that shot her had persistently been asking her, harassing her sexually. But because of her resistance, he told her verbally that she will see. And during that protest, he went and shot this lady. He was to shoot her again. It took the intervention of another sympathetic soldier to prevent this other person from killing her. The lady is available, and the investigation will reach her so that we get more information from her concerning the conduct of this very personnel. And Mr. Speaker, the military high command has been doing its best to ensure that it lives up to its reputation as the Nigerian army that has respect for human rights. But there are some within the rank and file that are negating these very noble objectives of the military high command. And this motion is intended to ensure that action is taken so that the reputation of the Nigerian army will now not go down the drain as a result of the activities and actions of a few bad elements within the army and the military generally. And Mr. Speaker, because of this situation, the situation in Plateau State is now very critical. It is a very, very critical situation that this House needs to intervene as the House of the Nigerian people. And that is why we have raised this motion. And I will yield the floor to my brother, Edward Pojok, to further make comments, Mr. Speaker, on this very submission. Thank you, honorable colleagues, as you support this motion, that this matter be thoroughly investigated so that we put an end to the human rights abuse by some elements within the army and the military generally, so that we preserve the reputation of the Nigerian military. Thank you, honorable colleagues.
Honorable Pojok.
Thank you, honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, my name is Edward Pojok. Mr. Speaker, I must note that and commend our colleague, Honorable Gyang, who took the time to go to the hospital to visit one of the patients that was shot at the checkpoint. Mr. Speaker, from the body of the motion, he has given us some information that ordinarily most motions I have noticed in this House does not contain. And what is that? He has said he has interacted with one of the victims, and the victim has been able to identify the person who allegedly shot at her. Mr. Speaker, most previous motions will be saying unknown gunmen attacked so and so person. Today, we are having a known gun person, and the victim has said she is ready and willing at any time when called upon to testify. That is a very, very good, and it will make our job easier when we are investigating. So no one has been found guilty yet. But the good thing is that some persons are ready to testify before the committees to get justice. Mr. Speaker, may I urge that even in doing that, we ensure that there is maximum security for the witnesses, including the girl who is now on hospital bed. I do know that in other countries, when you have such high-profile witnesses that may give evidence, that may endanger some persons who are in privileged positions, you find that even by the hospital door, you find policemen or other security to ensure that her life is protected, because it may very well be that all the accusations that have been made previously, that we're having men and women in uniform who, instead of protecting the lives of others, are now the source of the danger, of endangering others' lives, that maybe we'll get to the bottom of the matter. So I urge that that particular lady, who is 17 years, and an SS1 student, her life be protected, using all the resources available to the government. Mr. Speaker, I dare say that with the impunity happening today in Nigeria, where, let us say, we are gradually moving to the Hobbesian state, where life is nasty, brutish, and short. Maybe one day, instead of Nigerians coming to demonstrate here, maybe we in this House should also move to the force headquarters or to the defense headquarters and even go and show symbolically that we empathize with other Nigerians who are losing their lives daily. Because let it not be that it's just a mere statistic where we're saying the motion moved by the leader of the House, 26 Nigerians died on the high seas. All of us deprecated that kind of conduct. Almost every day on the floor of this House, there are motions being moved that Nigerians are being killed. Are we just lamenting on mere statistics or on human beings whose lives are very, very important, not only to their families, but to the entirety of this country? So I think that the time has come that we should move beyond just mere emotions to show to the whole world and to Nigerians that we care about each life. In other places, even in America, when there are attacks, within hours or within a day, you hear that at least justice has been done. What is the justice? The state will unravel whoever are behind those attacks. But in Nigeria, how many cases have we been able to unravel to discover who were the perpetrators of these attacks? I think that this investigation must uncover who the attackers are and ensure that justice is meted out, if only to serve as a deterrent to others, because it seems as if we are incentivizing, that is, we are giving incentives to others to continue with this impunity because nobody is being brought into the book. But if you start bringing some people into the book, maybe these attacks will begin to cease, because it now seems as if there's a culture of attacks where life is not being treated again with any respect. So, Mr. Speaker, as sad as this motion is, I believe that if we do the needful, maybe, and I'm saying maybe optimistically, that we'll begin to see the end of these senseless attacks by some Nigerians on their fellow kith and kin. So like I said, I will not say more so as not to be seen to prejudice the investigation that I will be part of, but I promise that we will do a very thorough investigation to get to the bottom of the matter. Thank you, honorable colleagues.
The blame on the doorstep of the National Assembly that we have dropped the ball and have not done what we're supposed to do as a legislature. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I looked at the motion and I noticed that he was talking about the military to do with internal security. And I couldn't understand what the military was doing in Plateau State as it relates to internal security. Because as far as I know and as far as I understand the Constitution, that is the job of the police. So I do not know where the military begins to act what we call ultra-virus, its responsibilities, and are now in charge of internal security. From the provisions of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, in Section 217, the military is designed and set up for the purposes of external aggression, to defend Nigeria from external aggression, and to protect its territorial integrity. But there's a leeway. There's an opening somewhere in Section 217, which is subsection 217(2)(c), which says that the military can also be used to suppress insurrection and act in aid of civil authorities to restore order. But, Mr. Speaker, that if the military is to exercise that power, the section also says it is subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. In other words, even in using the military to perhaps aid other authorities, the use of that military for that purpose, which is not its main core purpose, must be subject to an act of Parliament. So where is the act of Parliament that restricts the use for that particular purpose in Plateau State or any other state? If that had been there, perhaps we would not have as many killings or reckless killings or abuse of human rights as we have now. That is why I said part of the blame is to do with the National Assembly. So I think it is a call upon us as legislators to very quickly provide with the executive with an act that will limit the use, perhaps its time, curfew, or what they can do. Can they carry guns or whatever it is we need that can curb this use, these incessant killings of civilians. So I think it's, and I will encourage the mover of the motion, to sit with some of our members across board to bring up an act or a bill that will very quickly clip the wings of the military. You can use the military, and that is the constitutional responsibility of the military, for external aggression and the rest of it. But when it comes to internal use, it has to be backed by an act of the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I'm also not sure, it's also an opportunity for this House, because he talks about sexual harassment. The question is, what is sexual harassment? Do we have a law, a comprehensive law that defines what sexual harassment is? Because without that law, it becomes very subjective. You can accuse the military man of sexual harassment, and he will tell you that no, he didn't sexually harass anybody. In the absence of a codification of the meaning of sexual harassment. If I tell you, oh, you look nice today. If I walk into this place and I tell Honorable Egwinedion, oh, I like what you're wearing, you look nice. That can be sexual harassment for some people. So it's important that we codify and establish what exactly is sexual harassment. Because if you leave that window open, that is when people like the military man that you talked about can even wriggle out of it and say, no, I did not do that. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I welcome the motion, I support it fully, but I think it also gives us an opportunity to bring in two very important laws. One under Section 217, an act of the National Assembly that says, in the event that you are using the military to support civilian aid, these are the restrictions, we straitjacket them into certain things. And then two, to bring up a comprehensive statute that deals with sexual harassment. Thank you.
My name is Abdurazak Namdas. I represent the people of Ganye, Jada, Tongoma, Ibelo. I am from Adamawa State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this very important motion raised by Gyang and Pajok. Mr. Speaker, it is true, just like Gyang actually said, that the Nigerian military have done its best to ensure that it follows the rules of engagement in terms of their operations, and even particularly in trying to settle some civil unrest that they are drafted to do. But certainly there are some characters among them that we need to caution. What has happened in Plateau State is actually very unfortunate. Our hearts bleed that people who are asked to protect other people are shooting people at sight. This is frightening, and it should not be encouraged. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because I had a bitter experience of this in my very constituency. At a point, I'm from Yola, in the part of Northeast. Military personnel that were deployed to maintain peace in my area. A young lady reported a matter to a military personnel that one guy had just stolen her own handset. And before we realized, that military personnel went ahead, because that lady was his girlfriend, and went ahead and beat the hell out of that young man to death. And it was very sadistic, and then the entire community wanted to revenge and trying to see how they could, and it could cause issues. Our leaders, our traditional leaders, stakeholders had to intervene. So these things is not only in Plateau State, it's virtually everywhere. And therefore, I will be very happy that this motion is actually taken seriously and be investigated, so that people who are asked to please guard the lives of people should do this within the rules of engagement. Because you have guns, you cannot go ahead and begin to shoot people just because you feel you have the gun in your hands. I think if that is done, so long as this investigation is done and the people are called to order, they should be dealt with seriously, so that these things should not continue in other parts of the country. That's my contribution, Mr. Speaker. I saw.
Present Abua Odoala, who is federal constituency from Rivers State. Mr. Speaker, it's obvious that Nigeria is gradually becoming a military state. Like the majority leader has said, we are using the army excessively in doing internal security in Nigeria, which is actually a big problem for us as a nation. We have reduced our police force to become traffic wardens and bodyguards and roadblock maintenance people. We should use more of the police to solve the internal problems of internal security problems of the nation and restrict the army to the barracks. There are too many military operations going on everywhere in Nigeria. And unfortunately, when you have excessive military operations, the people that suffer are women, because you have a lot of rape issues whenever you have military in excessive use in the internal operations of a nation. So please, it is important that the executive is called to adhere strictly to the constitution provision of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to use the police to solve the internal security problems of the nation. Because all we are doing is using the military force to go to anywhere. Today, you hear of Operation Python Smile. Python is dancing all over the Niger Delta and smiling in some other places. And I mean, the name alone, Python, is so annoying. You understand? So we should really go back to the police and try to do information gathering to really know what is causing the challenges we are having in the nation, and look at better ways of resolving our internal security rather than carrying the military and having them harass people all over the place, shooting people at will, raping women at will, and we are not still solving the problems these military people are supposed to solve for us. The military, the executive should be called to order to send the military back to the barracks and let Nigeria operate like a state in a country in democracy and not a country under military rule.
Honorable Benny.
That the amendment reads that the special task force, the operational efficacy of the special task force be reviewed by the National Assembly with a view to arresting further attacks. We do not think that the special task force is efficient enough and they're doing their duties the way they should be. And so, Mr. Speaker, attacks have been occurring and reoccurring and reoccurring, even in their presence and with their presence. I mean, in their presence and with their knowledge. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to also investigate that and have them report back to the House. That's the special task force in Plateau State. Thank you.
Any seconder? Men say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. 8th order of the day, honorable colleagues, the motion